Welcome to this week in the world of wrestling.
Welcome to TWitWoW, the best wrestling podcast made for wrestling fans, by wrestling fans, on the web today. I'm John, that's my cohort and commentary Ashton, and this is our Friday night Smackdown review. And guys, I gotta tell you, I really enjoyed this Smackdown. We got some great storyline developments in some matches, some great overall Money in the Bank development in others. Just a solid 2 hours of wrestling programming for this guy. Ashton, what'd you think of it?
Yeah, man, I thoroughly enjoyed this SmackDown. There were a few points when I was like, okay, well, this match is probably going to go for 15 minutes. I don't care. I'm going to check out now. But it drew me back in. It was that good. So,
Right.
yeah, definitely a solid SmackDown. The only real complaint that I have, actually, you know what? Before I say that, let's move into our complaining segment, Heat of the Night. And now I can say the only complaint that I really have is it felt like a very babyface heavy episode of SmackDown. I mean, your main event was literally a 3-on-4 handicap match where the babyfaces were at a disadvantage, and yet somehow, some way, LOL Cena wins, LOL Sheamus wins, and LOL Roman reigns.
I completely understand where you're coming from. Even with a man disadvantage on the part of the babyfaces, they still overcome. I think you, me, and everybody's grandmother expected that to happen, but it doesn't make it any less irritating when it does, because it's like, oh, they always have to prevail. So is that your only complaint about this SmackDown?
Yes, so what's yours?
Not necessarily a complaint, more like a head scratcher. We had a match tonight between Big E and Jack Swagger, and Zeb Coulter, cut a promo before the match, blaming how he pronounced Atlanta for giving Big E a quote-unquote handout in the form of a win over Jack Swagger. So, they go out, they have their match, and long story short, there's no appearance from Lana or Rusev, either during the match, the post-match, whatever. And this kind of left me scratching my head a little bit. I'm like, I thought that these three guys, or two of these guys, one being Rusev and then either Big E or Swagger, were in a program. So I don't know if this is going to be further addressed on Monday, or if Rusev's like, there's a traditional Money in the Bank ladder match that I have to qualify for. So yeah, you just enjoy squabbling amongst yourselves.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. I don't know. I didn't really see that big of a deal. I enjoyed what we got from the whole Coulter, Swagger, Big E thing. I like that it was a quick borderline squash match because it's starting to really feel like Jack Swagger is kind of settling into his role as a mid-card jobber, and I think that it works because jobbers are good and all, but if you get a jobber that can really genuinely draw heel heat like Swagger can because of Coulter, it makes it that much better.
Definitely agree with you. Also, it's nice to see Big E back on the dominant side of things.
Yes, exactly. It almost feels like Triple H is winning the war against Kevin Dunn for NXT superiority.
Oh, that's a whole separate commentary in itself, brother, but I really hope that Triple H can pull out all the stops, because this is the Big E to me that babyface or heel can really make an impact. It doesn't matter his alignment. When you keep the dominance consistent,
Yep.
It delivers and it writes itself.
Absolutely.
And I was so glad to see him steamroll Swagger tonight. I thought that was a major improvement from what we've seen from Big E, really the last couple of months, not even weeks. So,
all right, John, you know what? I do have one legitimate heat of the night, and it's got it's sort of diva related, but it's kind of outside of the context of what like a typical diva segment on Raw or SmackDown would be, so I think we can call it the exception to the rule.
all right, I'm intrigued to hear this. What do you got going on, man?
I hate that the Total Divas canon is separate from the Raw and SmackDown canon. We have seen on Total Divas, Summer Rae and Fandango had literally one night on the town. They went to a bar together and they went back to his place. She threw herself at him, felt like it wasn't working, got awkward, and she left. And on tonight's episode of SmackDown, she said she loved him and that something about when they were dating as if they were ever dating. And to me, it is obnoxious and makes absolutely no sense that you have this company promoting a TV show featuring their talent and then ignoring the canonical storylines that go on that TV show.
What's even worse to me, Ashton, is that there have been times where they've tried to, I guess, intersect these universes.
Yeah, like on Main Event when they had Cameron versus Natalya, and Natalya was borderline shooting on Cameron because of the whole cat thing.
Right, and then when, the Bellas didn't really like the paintings that Natalia made for them, and she seemed to throw it. But see, the thing is, even when they try and intersect these universes, that also becomes a problem, because with that storyline in particular that I referenced, it didn't go anywhere. Natalia is still Natalia, much to all of our chagrin, and, nothing really came of it. I mean, Brie Bella is gone now, and Nikki Bella, I haven't seen her in weeks. So it didn't even really develop into anything. So either intersect the universes and acknowledge them both, or don't. But either way, don't try and make it a mixed bag, all with equally bad results.
Thing, dude. I don't think that don't is even an option. I think, to me, the two options are either A, intersect the universes, treat it like one big universe, and stop trying to make your viewers ignore one or the other, or B, stop acting like Total Divas is a WWE show. You plug it on Raw, you plug it on the app, you have all of these different segments dedicated to what happened on Total Divas. To me, if you're going to ignore the canon on Total Divas in the first place, you shouldn't be allowed to also plug it in that same breath.
I completely agree. In fact, between the two options you mentioned, I would prefer option B, personally. I don't want to see...
I think most people would prefer option B, but from a financial standpoint, I think the WWE would prefer option A. But on that same note, if you're going to plug it, if you're going to give all of this time and attention on your main wrestling shows to Total Divas, you need to, at the very least, acknowledge the storylines that go on that show.
Absolutely. And I think my biggest pet peeve as a fan, I don't know if many people know this because I've never really discussed it. I mean, there are good storylines and there are bad storylines. And honestly, to me, the one thing that gets under my collar more than anything, because I can deal with bad storylines, what I can't deal with is when a storyline goes seemingly unresolved or unfinished. And Total Divas has done that. Now, I do think that they're going to finish what they're doing here with Fandango, Summer Rae, and Layla. But, I mean, you're completely right. From a logical standpoint, for those who keep up with both universes, they're scratching their heads thinking, wait a minute, Summer Rae and Fandango had one outing. What chemistry, what lifetime love is she talking about, is she referring to? So, yeah, I don't know. I'm not really digging it either. I can totally see where you're coming from. On that same note, though, I mean, if anything, I'm glad these two women have something to do that doesn't revolve around the Divas championship or just being there. I guess they are trying to create a different story, and I can commend them for that. I just wish it was better put together.
Yeah, and the primary reason that we generally say that Divas segments aren't allowed to be Heats of the Night, because if we did allow them to be, I would have a second Heat of the Night tonight involving the only relevant Divas storyline on SmackDown tonight revolving around a male superstar. So, yet again, WWE showing their misogyny as well as their racism. 9 of the 11 talents that were released last week were not... Let me rephrase that. Only 2 out of the 11 talents that got released last week were white Americans. 2 out of 11. Just throwing that out there. Everyone else was either black or not from America or Japanese. You get the idea. Like,
wow.
Yeah, so misogyny, sexism, racism, yeah, WWE has a lot of that underlying, but this isn't a podcast about that. This is a podcast about SmackDown tonight.
Yes, and SmackDown tonight was terrific with those things aside. And with that said, let's get right into our Friday night SmackDown review. And how do we open this baby up, brother?
With one of the corniest of all the corny John Cena promos of all time. But the difference between this one and most of the other ones is that I actually like this one because he opens things up as John Cena in recap mode, which is something that I can get used to and frankly would like to see more often.
Completely agree. He asks the audience in attendance, you might be wondering why those belts are hanging above my head, along with how come neon green is my new favorite color, how come I say you can't see me, despite the fact that that's visual irony. And then he talks really fast about how we got to this point of the championships being taken off Daniel Bryan and hung up there, leading us to Money in the Bank. And he says that, you look at the competitors in the ring, it almost looks like a bad joke. 7 wrestlers get in the ring, and then he says, I'm going to skip the punchline and just let you know that I'm going to get them all in line and punch them. And then he pretty much says that he's going to climb the ladder at Money in the Bank, grab the championships, and proclaim to the world, the champ is here. God, I hope not. And then who was our first interruptee?
Alberto Del Rio, and he came out and claimed that John Cena wasn't remembering how dangerous he was.
Yeah, John Cena and everyone else.
Because he isn't that dangerous. The most dangerous thing he's ever done was, oh wait, I can't think of anything, because he's never actually done anything that dangerous. The worst thing that's ever happened from a danger standpoint in an Alberto Del Rio storyline was a car getting stolen, and it wasn't even Del Rio doing the stealing, it was freaking Sheamus.
See, now this is where if Ricardo was still with Alberto, he'd be applying cold water to the burned area. But regardless, he pretty much says exactly that. You've forgotten how dangerous I am. Juanito, yeah, ooh, so scary. And then he
And the
pretty much
really
says,
funny thing about that was, it sounded like he really just wanted to call him Wani, but it made literally no sense. So he added the toe at the end to kind of make it sound like he was just planning on saying Juanito the whole time.
yeah, it was a nice cover-up, but awkward at the same time, because, I don't know, I mean, I've taken very little Spanish in my time, but I always thought it was just, he's John Cena, so it would just be Juan. No Juanito, no Juanito, I don't know. Just felt awkward to
Well,
me,
no, I
but
mean it's that's the thing. Juan is like the equivalent of John in Spanish, but Juanito implies that he is smaller or lesser than Del Rio.
of course, because that's always what Del Rio's insults come down to, either being a dog or smaller or lesser than he is, so
Yeah,
I should have known. But yeah, pretty much
that's
this is,
basically his version of Chihuahua for John Cena.
yeah, really. But Del Rio proclaims that he will be the champion. And Money in the Bank, well, we have a conflict of interest here. We have 2 guys who think that they're both going to be champion. But wait, because then a
Let's
third guy
introduce
is
a
right.
third.
And who was that third, Ashton?
I believe the third was Sheamus, as a matter of fact, and of course, because he and Del Rio have all the history together, he comes out and saying, "Hey there, Bertie, I think you're wrong, mate, no, fella."
Yeah, pretty much says that, I don't find you threatening at all. And then Sheamus, being the classical douche that he is, but I'm not gonna lie, I kind of love this, pretty much says that the biggest, problem he has isn't even in that ring. It's going to be figuring out how to get through airport security with all that championship gold, because after Money in the Bank, he will be the unified United States champion and WWE World Heavyweight Champion. Fella, what a douche.
It was, I gotta give Sheamus some credit here, though. Pretty much everything he said was right. Between nobody caring about what Del Rio has to say. And that's the thing, he didn't say Del Rio wasn't dangerous. He said, Del Rio, don't worry, we haven't forgotten how dangerous you are, just that nobody gives a damn about what you have to say.
That's right, pretty much proclaiming Del Rio to be what we have said for quite some time now, and that's just purely irrelevant.
Pretty much. But on that same note, yeah, Sheamus does pull out the whole airport security thing about how he's going to have too much gold carrying with him and all that junk. So yeah, that's Sheamus. But then guess who comes out next, John?
Roman Reigns? No, Cesaro.
Cesaro.
Yes. And Heyman is just on a roll here, pretty much talking about how Cesaro, Heyman is not going to prep strategy for Cesaro to win, because he can take care of that himself. No, Heyman's strategy at Money in the Bank is ensuring that the men in this ring all lose. And that's why Cesaro is going to win, because he has a brilliant strategist in his corner. The same strategist who ensured that Brock Lesnar conquered The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania. Did you know that, Ashton? Did
I
you
was
know that?
not aware. I'm glad you reminded me, though. Can you tell me again?
His client, Brock Lesnar, conquered The Undertaker's undefeated streak at WrestleMania. The more you know.
Okay, I'm glad that we established that. That's brand new news to me. I've never heard that before. So up next, we had Roman Reigns coming down through the crowd and saying that ever since Seth Rollins stabbed him in the back, he's had a little bit trouble trusting people. But all that matters now is this, and he points up to the title. and no one in this ring is going to stop me. And he says that in John Cena's face. John Cena gets the sex eyes going on. He takes off the chain after kissing it and throws his shirt off. He is ready for Reigns' body, but Randy Orton interrupts.
First of all, before we get into it, Randy Orton, I just want to touch very quickly on Roman Reigns. I loved his mic work here. I also love that WWE, I think, is just very quietly split up Ambrose and Reigns to be, their own individuals while probably still friends or whatever dynamic they want to go with that. Love that. I'm glad this wasn't a big dramatic affair with all three guys and that the real enemy, the real Judas here, so to speak, is Rollins. I think that's great direction. And Reigns' confidence, I can get behind, big time. Nobody's going to stop me now. Well, damn, son, I'm not going to try. And Randy Orton comes out, and I love Randy Orton's promo, too, because he pretty much says, Roman, you say that nobody in that ring is going to stop you. Well, I'm not in that ring, Roman, and I sure as hell know that you're not going to stop me. And, oh, man, I love it. The uncrowned champion and Randy Orton finally getting his fair rematch after you and I protested it for so long, Ashton.
It's not even fair. He has to beat 6 other guys, and you can't even win the traditional way. You have to climb a ladder like a dad cleaning the gutters.
I know, man, I know. But if anybody can overcome it, it's the apex predator.
Yeah, I still doubt it. But regardless, Orton does cut a really solid promo here. He said, "Oh, Reigns, I see you finally learned that you can't trust anyone in this company." And he says about how he's the face of the WWE, Reigns isn't running through anyone, and the titles are going to come home where they belong with me. But then Reigns charges him on the floor, they start brawling, and randomly everyone else starts brawling, and Cena is just kind of standing there in the middle of the ring like, what are you guys doing?
Like, I want to join too, but I don't know who to hit. And yeah, everybody's going nuts. Reigns and Orton are going at it. All the way it seems like the backstage area. Cesaro and Sheamus for the millionth time reigniting their rivalry. So yeah, everybody's doing something, and Cena and Sheamus are just kind of looking at each other like, who's going to throw the first punch? But neither of them do. And I believe that's how we wrap up the segment, isn't it?
Yep, that's correct.